Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth conference session of the spring virtual conference. We're going to allow people to populate in the Zoom meeting before we get started. So hang tight. We'll get started in about a minute and a half. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Kieran O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Recycling Coalition, and welcome to our very different conference, very different annual conference, because as you know, everybody's doing things differently this year. We have 3 more weeks, or 3 weeks, including this week, of additional educational programming. So I hope that you're getting good information from the program we've put together. You know, before I start, I really want to just update you on a few things. Some of you have been attending regularly, have heard me say this, but Eagle has released an RFP for the 2021 Recycling Grant Program. That program is being kind of delivered on a rotating level. They've got like 3 different dates this year to put those proposals in. You can find information on their website under recycling and under grants. MRC members received their ballot for Board of Directors elections on April 16 or April 20. Please look for those and vote, and the results will be shared on our annual meeting on May 12th. Hope you'll join us for that. If you haven't heard yet, the Part 115 bill package passed through the House of Representatives last week. It has been referred to the Senate Regulatory Reform Committee. If you haven't yet shown or indicated your support for the package, now is the time to do that. The MRC newsletter of April 23rd has information about how you can do that in a public way. It's going to be a lot. The Senate hasn't heard anything about these bills, and it's going to be important to show your support if you can do that. So we've already hosted 4 of these conference sessions. You can go back to the MRC website. On that website, especially under the conference, you'll see information about that will give you access to recordings for those previous events. So please, if you haven't had a chance to see these other sessions, they're good, and we recommend you watching them and sharing them as great resources for other people who have interest in recycling. On Thursday, we'll be discussing increasing recycling quality in Michigan, curbside and drop-off. This is really a data-driven effort to reduce contamination and help communities step up to delivering quality materials. So I think it's going to be a really good session. We have 3 sessions planned again next week, and next week is International Compost Awareness Week, and so you'll share information next week about organics management and the value of compost. Before we go any further, it's important to recognize our sponsors. We have a whole list of them. These sponsors have been with us for many years and are really the kind of support for the tremendous work we've accomplished. Funding for recycling in Michigan, changes to Michigan's solid waste law, as well as the more in-depth programming that we are able to provide. So thank you to all of these sponsors, including Waste Management, who is on the docket to present to you today. So you've all been on Zoom for a long time now, and you know all this stuff. Please keep yourself on mute. We use chat. This is a Zoom meeting, so please submit your questions through chat throughout the whole event anytime. This webinar is being recorded. If you have any technical issues that you need help with, you can chat directly with Help Desk Terry. You will find her in the list of participants, and she'll help you best she can. And just as a reminder, you really are in control of your view. While we will highlight speakers for you in the upper right-hand corner, you can use this symbol to control your view between speakers or the audience, and you can control the size of the presentation versus the size of the person who is speaking by using this slide toggle. So without further ado, the session what we have for you today is really getting cost-effective recycling services for your business. We've got 4 great speakers. Tom Carpenter is the Senior Director of Energy and Environmental Services for Waste Management. Tom manages relationships with the company's manufacturing and industrial customers, and he manages a team that works with businesses and organizations to assess their needs. Dr. Kate Martini is a sustainability specialist for Bell's Brewery. She uses her PhD in behavior analysis to facilitate continuous improvement to Bell's stewardship efforts. Chris Babcock is Senior Environmental Quality Specialist for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Chris provides compliance assistant around regulations, sustainability issues, risk mitigation, and safety. And finally, Kara Wright is a project manager for the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development, and she is working with the public and private sector partners at the council to move them towards circular economy and carbon reduction strategies across North America. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tom Carpenter.
All right, thank you for having me.
Sorry, Tom, you got muted, and I apologize for that. That is probably my error.
Can you hear me now? All right, I appreciate the opportunity to speak and kind of just share a bit of our story, but also some lessons learned. We work with a lot of large companies from automotive to petrochemical, and we've taken those lessons learned and brought it to all different other spaces from healthcare and other things. But what I wanted to do is just share kind of a story based on what we could learn from sport. We've taken those same ideas and put it on a grand scale, and many of you may be familiar with the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. But what we can glean from that is a process that we've used, whether it be a large company or somebody could use those same processes to just deep dive into their own small organization to get similar results. Next slide. So the Waste Management Phoenix Open, if you're not familiar with it, it's the largest single sporting event next to kind of the Olympics. There's over 500,000 people on a Saturday, and you have people that are there to watch golf, you have people there to party, and people all in between. And just like every walk of life with that, creating a zero waste event, you kind of see the exact same things that you would see maybe in a business or society. You have those people that really care about it, those people that don't even really comprehend the aspects, and people that fall in between them. With such a large event, what we really wanted to do is really showcase how could you do something on that grand a scale. And it took it through kind of the process. First, we had to dissect and understand the flow, understand the population of people going in there, but also understand from an input standpoint, what are all the different materials? The food vendors, the beverage vendors and other things, the stores, what were the materials that were being disposed of, and how could we better manage that? Next slide. We did a bold move and really started to go upstream into the process. And today, if you go to the Waste Management Phoenix Open, that large of event, you think of any big sporting event or any big business, could you imagine having no trash containers? That would be kind of very interesting if you think of that. And we only have recycling and compost containers. You can push to the next slide. So when you think of that, it really kind of, we had to start by what are those inputs again. So today, if you look at it, any vendor that serves food, any vendor that serves any product or sells things, those materials have to fall into one or two categories. So they're either able to be recycled or able to be composted. With that, we had to work with those vendors to choose the right products, look at, what they were purchasing on the front end and analyze that all throughout. From there, we really engage the participants, engage the customers, if you will, to really educate them on their part of what they need to do. And when you could see that such a grand scale, and if you've been to big sporting events, you realize real quickly that people often don't care of what to do from a program standpoint. That could be the same thing as you start out on your journey. And really, we use this as an example of if it could be done on a grand scale with things that you have more and more control of, you often can drive behaviors and aspects of that in a much better way. Next slide. So starting your journey, it's important whether you are starting on a journey for sustainability reasons, or if you want, you have environmental goals and other things. These steps or these processes we often use with every company that we work with, whether it's a large scale waste management Phoenix Open, or a large automotive plant, or petrochem refinery facility, or a large hospital complex. It starts the same way. And as a small business, you would take these exact same steps. Next slide. So first and foremost, you need to assess your current performance. Where are you at? If you were, I liken it to if you were to decide that you wanted to run a 5K, you would assess your fitness. You would understand, okay, how far can I run today? Maybe what's my weight? Do I have a pair of running shoes? Do I have the right equipment? So all of those things to assess where you are at. So that means, how much is your energy bill? How much am I using, in water? But on the waste side, it's really dissecting, how much waste am I producing in a regular basis? What is in that waste stream? And oftentimes we start out with what's called a waste audit. And this could be a fun and engaging way to really, dissect what's in your waste stream. Common way to do that is to take your trash cans, get a big thing of Visqueen or some plastic wrap. On a good day, spread it all out, and you start to categorize it. Next slide. So categorizing is really trying to understand what is in your waste stream. So this slide really shows in the typical household or sometimes typical business, what is that breakdown? So you'd start to sort that waste stream into different piles. So are there items in that pile that are recyclable, such as paper, plastics, aluminum bottles, or other things like that? So those would all go to one side because those are items that generally there's a recycling program out there that you could insert those things into. So if they ended up in the trash, maybe you have some education to do, maybe it's a collection points or other things like that. And when you move to the other side, look at, are there opportunities on the organic side? So do I have food scraps? Do I have compostable products or plant trimmings or other things like that? And then finally, you get into kind of what is kind of in that other category. In that other category, it may be deemed as trash, but that's also an opportunity. Are there items in there that you purchased that if you made a different choice, it could be recycled? Or if you made a different choice on maybe a container, could it be composted? So those are the different decisions that you kind of make sense of. Finally, within that other category, sometimes there's those odd things that may need to, you need to collaborate and work with others, and we're going to hear some stories later on. Maybe there's not a program that can recycle it readily, but maybe if you partnered with other like businesses that had similar materials, maybe you could develop a market for that or find a home for those materials. Next slide. So the next piece that's really important is to really start to define your values before your goals. Oftentimes we want to, when we start measuring and we dive into that, we start to measure things and we think of tactics and strategies to get to our goals. But ultimately, you are in a business and a community that you're giving back to that community. You're operating, you have a service and engaging, product and other things. So it's important to start with our values and work our way down. So when you start with values and work towards goals, you really start with the ethos of why your company is in business. why do you serve the products that you do? Why do you, do the different things that makes you unique as a business? It really comes down to kind of your brand. So part of that, as you attach goals to that, it makes it much, much easier versus saying right out of the gate, we're going to be a zero landfill company, or we are going to use, zero water, or cut back our water, by X. If you don't start with your values and understand how do you attach those things and then drive those goals and then develop strategies and metrics, it makes it much, much harder to ultimately achieve your goals at the end of the day. Next. One more. So next step would really be to to collaborate with others. Oftentimes when you are a small business, you'll have material streams or things and programs that you're not sure what to do. Oftentimes there's community events, there's recycling programs, there's other kind of educational pieces, but then there's also times that you need to collaborate with others, maybe to pool together a certain item so you could really kind of save money at the end of the day and collaborate together. Collaboration also spurs ideas. So you may get ideas on this conference today of what others have done, but also just having those conversations maybe with a restaurant down the road or another retailer kind of within your space. What are they doing with certain waste streams? What are they doing to maybe improve the way they go about managing recyclables, or just even educating both their employees and their customers? Collaboration really, unless you want to feel like you're on an island, collaboration is necessary at all times because it really spurs on ideas and it keeps you going to kind of continually improve your programs. Next. From there, after you've collaborated, after you have your goals, after you're starting down that path, you really start to execute. And it's important as you are executing, how are you measuring things? So are you looking to start a recycling program and save money? Are you looking to start a program and be cost neutral? Within your goals or your program, how effective is it at the end of the day? Again, just as we started the assessment at the beginning of where we are, if we're not measuring exactly where we are going, you may be down a path and have no idea, is my program effective? Do I need to course correct? Do I need to tweak something? Or am I finding something as I'm getting down the road that would make things a little bit easier? It may be as simple as, setting out containers to recycle, but are you educating what goes in that container? Are you getting a lot of contamination? Is somebody throwing food scraps in your recycling container, or putting something else that's causing an issue? If you are finding those things and you're measuring that, you can tweak your program and course correct along the way. It's just like you would do with any business. If you're looking at how you deploy your services, or maybe selling a new product, sometimes getting that feedback from your customer, getting feedback from other data sources can help you kind of on your program as you kind of move forward. Next. But overall, kind of at the end of the day, you want to tell your story. This was a short kind of presentation story that we went through, but it's really important as you collaborate, as you walk through things, that you start to share that story. You're going to hear from other fellow members on this panel as they share their stories and walk through that. But we have so many ways to engage the consumer, to engage our customers, but also engage kind of other businesses, and formulating kind of all of those steps and walking through all of those pieces are very important to, at the end of the day, be proud of what you do and tell your story. Sometimes we make recycling very complex. We don't know which container to throw things in. We don't know, does this item be, should we compost this, or should we recycle this? Telling your story and engaging your customers and consumers and your community as part of that is just as important as starting the program, because you solicit their ideas, you make them part of the excitement around it, and you can continually kind of improve that program. Telling your story also really perpetuates the program, and it spurs off other customers or other businesses to follow suit. Then that's where we really get the momentum to make change within our communities, to drive some of these programs, and really participate more fully as we kind of go forward. And as waste management works with many different customers and companies and other things, is really, putting those customers first. So I'd say you want to do the same as you kind of solicit and drive the program, walking step by step through it, and then ultimately telling the story about it. The same process, the same flow is taking place, whether you're a big company or a small company. Those same steps would take place. So maybe some of these steps were helpful, but also encourage you to kind of reach out to other partners within your organization, lay out those steps, and then walk through kind of that going forward. So overall, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to kind of present. If there's questions later on, we'll be happy to. But as we move forward, we'll hear stories about going through some of those steps, but also collaboration from Dr. Kate Martini next.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Great. Awesome. So I think this will be a perfect follow-up to what Tom was talking about. I've got a couple stories of some cost-effective diversion programs for some difficult materials that we've implemented at Bell's Brewery. You can go to the next slide. So first, just a little bit of history about Bell's. We're located in Kalamazoo in Southwest Michigan. We were founded in 1985, and we're the 7th largest craft brewery in the United States. And we distribute across most of the United States, and we are 100% family owned and independent. So a little bit about some of our locations that I'll be talking about with these programs. We operate a brew pub and beer garden and general store out of our original brewery location in downtown Kalamazoo. So if you've ever come down to the beer garden and had a beer, this is our original brew pub. And this is where we brew beers that are still put on tap downtown. We also hold special events when we can. It's also a full restaurant, and I'll put in a little plug. Our staff have worked really hard to create a really fun and safe outdoor experience. So if you're in town, I'm sure they'd love to see you. We also have our production brewery, which is located 7 miles east of downtown in Comstock, Michigan. So if you have had a Two Hearted or an Oberon anytime in the past decade or so, this is where it came from. And this is also where a lot of our waste is generated too, and where some of our programs have focused. So the first materials story I'm going to tell you focuses on compost, located at our Extension Cafe downtown. You can go to the next slide. So this project started with our Bell's SWAT team. So this is kind of like our green team, our sustainability committee that we started. And every year when we have one of these committees, we do kind of an orientation with them that includes a study of sustainability reports of similar size and breweries that do really well with their sustainability programs. So we compare our KPIs to our KPIs, our key performance indicators. So we look at how much utilities we use per barrel of beer packaged. We look at energy, we look at solid waste, we look at water, and they get to pick an area to focus. And for this year, this was in 2017, they chose solid waste at our downtown retail campus, which is that Eccentric Cafe location. And they chose us for a very good reason. They noticed that, so the brewery itself, the production brewery, created over 1.5 million pounds of solid waste in 2016. And the Eccentric Cafe didn't even have 200,000 pounds, but created more landfill waste than our brewery. So, oh, I hear someone not muted. So they decided to focus on downtown because it had more landfill waste than our brewery, which was pretty staggering to them, but not surprising since we didn't have a compost service in place. So any of our compostable organic waste was going to landfill. So as Tom said, all cool solid waste projects start with a waste audit. So we said, awesome, we want to learn more about what waste is in our landfill dumpster. We'll have to audit it. So on a couple rainy, kind of chilly days, we pulled out all of the landfill waste from our dumpsters and sorted it. Unsurprisingly, we found a lot of food waste, which you can see in this photo. I hope none of you are eating lunch while you're watching this. And this was totally unsurprising. Nobody was doing anything wrong. We just didn't have another avenue for this waste. You can go to the next slide. So one of the other cool things we did with this waste audit that I thought might be important to share, in addition to doing the 2 audits where we pulled everything out of the dumpsters, we also had our staff downtown use different color bags for different types of waste. This was a way for us to kind of take a quick look at our dumpsters, and we could just open the lid and see what type of waste generally was filling those dumpsters. So we recorded data on that for a couple months as well. We used the purple bags have pre-consumer waste in them. So that was anything from the kitchen, like food scraps. And we chose this category because we wanted to see if we would have a significant amount of waste that could be used for pig feed, which would be a great partnership, potentially have someone come pick up some of that waste for free to feed to pigs. And so the black bags are post-consumer waste. So that is anything that came from like plate scrapings or spoiled food. Those are the items that would be suitable for industrial compost. And then the green bags are front of house waste. So that's bathrooms, paper towel, behind the bar, public trash bins. So I'm going to present some data about what we found during our waste audits. I have a feeling that most of you are pretty familiar with how solid waste gets measured in dumpsters, but I'm going to present it in cubic yards. So cubic yard is a volumetric measurement, about 3 by 3 by 3 feet. So our first waste audit, we had about 5 yards of waste. 2.2 of those yards were compostable materials. 1.1 yard of that waste was recycling material that shouldn't have been in that landfill dumpster. So we learned that we had some more education and effort to do with our recycling program. And then there was only 1.6 yards of waste that was actually landfill in our landfill dumpster. And of that 2.2 yards of compostable waste, we also divided that out into food waste and paper towel. So we had about 0.8 of a yard of paper towel during that first audit. And we used that to make an ROI for hand dryers in our downtown location. So if you visited since 2017, you'll notice in our public facing restrooms, we have hand dryers that has, we saved money on buying paper towels, and we also saved money on the landfill space that those paper towels were taking up. During COVID, we have put hand towels back into those bathrooms, so there's both now, but that program paid for itself in less than a year when we implemented it. You can go to the next one. So we did a second waste audit. We didn't want to base all of our costs and savings off of one single day out of a whole entire year. So we made sure to do 2 waste audits. That decrease in the compostable material, that green part of the bar, is due to the hand dryer implementation. We also, in between these 2 waste audits, started allowing pint glasses into the garden, which we developed some safety protocol, and we made sure that that change was going to work for everyone at our Eccentric Cafe location before we did it. And it was a huge success. It meant that we used less plastic cups overall, which meant that there were fewer plastic cups ending up in the dumpster accidentally just because there were fewer circulating around the area. So you can go to the next one. So during both of these audits, we had almost 5 yards during one audit and 3 yards of waste during the second audit. We had 10 yards of dumpster space. So we were kind of over calculating how much we needed to have on site, which meant that there was an opportunity to change our landfill service and downsize our collection, which could save some dumpster fees. So before we decided to implement all of these changes. We wanted to implement compost and we wanted to downsize our landfill collection. We had to make a pitch to our restaurant staff because we wanted to make sure that the whole program would be fiscally sustainable, that it would make sense, and also not create a service interruption. We didn't want to create a trash mountain of restaurant waste because that would be ethically disgusting. So here was our pitch. Originally, we had a 4-yard dumpster and a 6-yard dumpster for landfill. You can go to the next one. We proposed that for 2 months, we would lock that 4-yard dumpster to make sure that we had enough space, that we were calculating everything right, that we could fit all of our landfill, which we calculated at about 4 yards, and our compost, which would be about 2 yards of compost, into that 6-yard bin. So this was kind of our test period to make sure that all of our data collection was on point. You can go to the next one. And if that worked out okay, and they didn't have to unlock that 4-yard dumpster that we would still have on site, then we would make the change. We would get rid of that 6-yard dumpster. We would have 4 yards of landfill waste, and then we had compost carts for our 2 yards of compost waste. So Hammond Farms, which I believe is a sponsor for the conference too, is our service provider for compost. They still are. So this ended up working out. Everyone said yes. This is the system that we have implemented right now, which is great. So you can go to the next one. So back to that 2-month period. This 2 months is really a huge part of what made this program successful. There are 100, at the time, there were 168 staff downtown, and many of them are part-time and work kind of fluctuating schedules. So it can be really challenging to get a message as big as we are changing our entire way that we handle solid waste to all of them. So during that 2 months, you can go to the next one. We did a number of things, and the first of which was to host some tours at other places in Kalamazoo that had the same Hammond Farms collection service and see how they managed everything back of house. So this is a picture of some of our SWAT team staff and kitchen staff taking a tour across the street at Hopcat, which also uses Hammond Farms. And it was really great because I've seen compost set up, in different areas, but instead of just them listening to me talk about it, they got to actually see it in practice so they could come up with some ideas about how it would work best in our kitchen and our courtyard area where we would store everything. You can go to the next one. So in addition to that, we attended all staff meetings and gave a presentation about what the changes would look like and why we were doing it. We attended multiple leadership meetings to get some feedback. One of the things I found to be really effective and kind of fun was a communication board where we let staff just kind of pin things up to a cork board. And then within a couple of days, we promised to have an answer to them about whether that would be either compost or recycling, or, we got some really interesting things like corks from our wine bottles, packaging for, we have a first aid station and there's like little pill packets, so like packaging for that. We got lots of cool questions, and that it was really effective, I think, because people could use it without having to sit down on a computer and type out an email, without trying to find someone who had the answer. They could just pin the thing right to the board and they would get an answer. We also held office hours to make sure that we were available to answer questions in person. And then we developed some signage in coordination with all of the people who would be impacted by it too. So the next one is an example of some of that signage. So when we rolled out compost, we did it back of house first. So this is an example of a sign that was developed for our kitchen area specifically. And this way our staff downtown could get really familiar with the criteria for the compost system so that when we rolled it out front of house, they'd be able to answer questions and be really just a source of information for our customers who are using the system in front of house when we made that change. So before we rolled out the front of house system, we did some communications. We had a blog post, we shared some social media content. We were gearing up for our first patio barbecue, and this was in April of 2017. And so you can go to the next one here too. We developed some signs that were really specific to the materials that we were providing to them. So this is a point that Tom made too. we had complete control over what we were providing to people who were going to eat in the garden. And so we were really specific about what materials we gave them, and then we're able to reflect that on the signs, which I think was a huge part of what made this successful. So we rolled this program out. I had fully intended to only leave it up for a day and then take it right back down. It's supposed to be a pilot, but it went so well. It was great. There was like one cup that was missorted into the compost bin. So we ended up leaving it, and we've had front of house public facing compost since April of 2017. So it's been 4 years and a really successful program. So some ongoing changes and just some notes. It's really important to stay flexible with a program like this. It's not something you can just implement and walk away from. And some of the really cool ideas that people have had have kind of resonated and created some more impact. So we changed to a straws upon request process. So we don't, if you're getting a glass of water, usually when you sit down in a restaurant, there's water and straws kind of sitting out in front of you. We stopped putting straws out. We have them, and they're the compostable kind, but a lot of people don't actually need them or want them. So it's a way to save some resources and not have to deal with extra waste that's not necessary. Compost also started to be a topic in shift notes, which is not something that the sustainability team implemented. It's something that our staff decided to start doing on their own and has been really impactful and helpful. They also changed around kitchen collection bins. We started with really large bins, and they started using smaller buckets next to prep stations, which was something that made a lot of sense, but was an idea that we didn't start off with. And we also phased out plastics over time. So we had a big backstock of things like size cups and forks and stuff like that. So as those kind of petered out, we made sure to replace them with compostable versions. So our current stats, we increased the diversion rate at that location by 38%. Since 2017, we've diverted over 300,000 pounds of compost, and we send about 5,000 pounds of compost monthly. And we also avert about 738 pounds of CO2 emissions monthly, and that includes emissions from the truck heading back to Lansing area to Hammond Farms. And the entire program has been cost neutral, which is huge. So this is a more recent project that I'll give you a little bit of an update about. You can go to the next slide. So also, again, more waste audit, proving that waste audits really are as impactful as we say they are. During our waste audits, we have found that about 15% of our landfill waste was made up of grain bags. So the grain that we get for brewing, some of it, for us, some of it comes in these bags that are made from woven polypropylene, and they are recyclable. We also get grain in large silos, but for smaller breweries especially, 100% sometimes of their grain comes in these polypropylene woven bags. They can't go into mixed recycling, unfortunately, because of their size and format. There's no way to sort them out from mixed recycling at a materials recovery facility. So they require a special recycling program. And that recycling program needs to include condensing those grain bags into large bales. So think like 900-pound bales. Recyclers prefer to have them packaged that way, and then they would like to have enough to fill an entire semi-truck with those bales. So think of huge 900-pound bales filling a semi-truck. And even though 15% of our landfill waste is made up of these grain bags, Bell's alone would maybe only make 4 bales a year. So we didn't have enough of this grain bag material to make sense for a recycler to start taking it from us. So we kind of have known all along that if we were to find a way to recycle these grain bags, it would have to involve more people. We need a larger project. We need more of this material. You can go to the next one. So in 2019, Eagle announced grant opportunities to provide funding for recycling projects that affected recycling rates. So we, based on an example, there's a brewery called Great Divide in Colorado that has a recycling co-op for their grain bags. So we totally stole that idea and pitched a project to for this grant, we had to have some partners sign on with us to start with. So we needed a nonprofit partner, and Kalamazoo Nature Center is deeply entwined and respected in our community and has goals of bringing people and businesses together for sustainable solutions. So they were just a no-brainer partner. They were very supportive. We also signed on with Padnos as our recycling partner. So we needed to prove that we had materials, but we needed to prove that we had a place where they could go. And so Padnos has been a huge help in committing to taking our grain bags. And then we started the program with a group of brewery and manufacturer partners. So we needed to have a commitment to show that we had enough materials. So we signed on with One Well and Latitude 42, and CalSec is a natural hops, spice, and herb extract provider in the area. And they use a lot of super sacks. So super sacks are basically like giant grain bags. So it's the same exact material and recyclable along with the grain bags. So we recently opened up opportunities for more partners and more drop-offs. So I'll make sure to drop a link for more information into the chat if anybody on the call is interested in recycling some of that material with us. So this is what our system looks like. We have 2 balers that were funded partially by the grant. And this is part of the program that was the idea from Great Divide. So one baler we use for the polypropylene material, and the second baler we use for cardboard. So cardboard is a pretty desirable recycling material, and you can get a rebate for cardboard. And a lot of the small brewery partners in the area pay for their cardboard recycling dumpsters. So we're offering free drop-off if they want to bring their cardboard along with grain bags. And then when we send those bales for recycling, we get a small rebate, and that rebate helps fund maintenance and ongoing service for the grant project. So we also have this floor scale that was funded by it too. So here's where our drop-offs currently look like. This one's from CalSec. So these are super sacks that they brought on a trailer to us. And you can go to the next one. I see Sarah's on the call too. Hi, Sarah. She's from CalSec. Here's our very first bale that we made, mostly with CalSec super sacks, an example of our brief bags that we're also recycling. And yeah, it's really great. We're officially recycling grain bags for the first time since 1985, and it was made possible through Eagle. So now I'll keep watching the chat. So if anyone has questions they want to ask in the chat, I will keep an eye on that, and I'll be happy to answer more questions later. So next up is Chris Babcock.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Babcock, and I'm the statewide program manager for what's called the Integrated Assessment Program. You'll hear me throughout the presentation refer to it as an IA. Since we are a state agency, I'm required to use acronyms. So what is an IA? The IA program is meant for small businesses, and it's a 2-part program. It's part of a desktop review of your business operations, and then also a boots on the ground tour of your facility and a review of internal policies and plans. And this is a non-regulatory on-site assessment. And what we're trying to do is take a look at your business operations and identify areas that we can find some improvement for you. And the main areas of focus through this program are twofold: pollution prevention and compliance assistance. And a couple important points of this program is this is free, it is statewide, it is non-regulatory. You'll hear me refer to that several times. I know the apprehension of businesses to open up their doors to a regulatory agency. Just real briefly, I've spent 26 years in environmental, 13 of it in consulting and 13 with state agencies. And I spent a bulk of that on the compliance or regulatory side. And so I've helped people over the years to get into compliance and help them stay in compliance. And that is what I mean by it's non-regulatory and the service is free, that I'm there to identify potential issues and just make you aware of them. And whether or not you act on them is up to you. And also sometimes I try to prioritize what you may view as a regulatory concern. If an outside agency came in, I may have a different perspective on that. So I may assist you with being able to reprioritize any issues that you might want to address. This IA program is multimedia. We're going to look at air, water, waste, energy, environmental management system, your recycling opportunities. It's really comprehensive, and as part of our questionnaire, we ask you what your goals are, and we can scale that back and focus on what is most important to you in your business and objectives. At the end, you're going to get a report of findings and suggestions, and it's only going to be sent to you, no one else. It'll stay between our small unit and yourself, and they're just that. They're suggestions, they're not mandatory. And later on, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but Eagles is excited that we have some pollution prevention grants that just went live today on our website, and I will put that in the chat and discuss that in a later slide. So briefly, the background, where did the IA program come out of? Well, before my time and involvement, it was identified that, and it was rooted in manufacturing initially, but we're open to any small business, that we had 26,000 manufacturing facilities and other small businesses, and they have limited resources. There's a lot of global competition, there's local competition, and with increasing regulatory oversight. And so this program was kind of born out of that to try to service those needs. And over time, it evolves based on what the market bears and what the market needs. The program was established using an EPA grant. And when I say those businesses, what I'm referring to is, to qualify, you have to have less than 500 employees. And in my mind, that's really not a small business, but we use that as the demarcation line simply because the Small Business Administration has that as a threshold. And so we'll help any small business. And our goal is to help those that don't have or have very minimal environmental staff on site. We're not trying to compete with the private sector, and we're trying to help those that don't have the funding to hire an outside consultant to come in. So, pollution prevention. The first part, as you can see here, and many of you are very familiar with this, and pollution prevention is working to eliminate, reduce, or reuse. Under the strict definition of pollution prevention, recycling is not considered a part of that unless it is recycled within a process or is a closed loop within the business. But we often start there. That is definitely an opportunity to help with the environment. And yes, schools do qualify. I saw the pop-up from Rosemary. Thank you for asking. We're going to try to increase efficiencies and help you realize some cost savings, reduce or eliminate waste streams. Some of the things, again, it's very broad what we can provide as a service, but in a manufacturing setting, we may have suggestions for chemical or product substitution to something that is less harmful or less toxic. Come up with suggestions for or opportunities for lighting upgrades, maybe go from flood lighting to more of a task lighting depending on the business, conserve energy and water resources. Most recently, it seems like in some of the manufacturing facilities I've gone in, they're ISO certified, or they're looking to become ISO certified. And I apologize if you don't know the lingo, but that's an environmental management system. And they kind of wanted a third objective review before they went through their audit process. And we were able to provide that. We do have some special tools that we can use. We have thermal imaging cameras, ultrasonic detection, and some electrical use meters. I believe this is a picture of what a thermal imaging device would give us, the camera. And so it just kind of gives you an idea that depending on the time of year, it's going to show us either, heat loss or cold loss, if you will. And it gives a nice visual and also a temperature range there, and it dates it. So it's very useful to present to management, or, if you're the business leader, it's very visual of where you can use some dollars to save some money long-term. The second part, compliance assistance, as I mentioned earlier, that I can assist you if you have concerns. I've had businesses that will ask, well, I have these stored outside. Should they be in this location? Should they be in another location? And that's where we try to help out with, it may be secondary containment requirements, proper labeling or signage. And you know, before we start this boots on the ground, I send out a questionnaire, and I'll go through the list a little bit later. But once I receive the questionnaire back, I'll do what I said earlier is called the desktop review, where I have access to different databases, both public facing as well as state or federal facing. And I can go in and look up your company, and I can find out if you know the results of past inspections, if you have permits, what's the status of those permits. And part of that is just to make you aware of as a business owner, you know, there may be something in the file that's incorrect, similar to a credit report, that you want to make sure you get corrected so that it doesn't stay there indefinitely. Or that, say, an agency did an inspection and they were waiting for a response from you, and you submitted it, but it didn't get properly entered. And so we just kind of want to help clean that up. Next slide. And you can go ahead and click on all three. Thank you. So just a couple pictures here to show you. And the one on the upper left, we have improper storage of cylinders. And this is a situation, and it's common, that these are incompatible. You don't want to store acetylene and oxygen next to each other. It's just a recipe for disaster. And on the right-hand side, yes, I've walked and found different chemicals, in this case, gas cylinders, stored in a closet. And as you can see, they're not chained. The top is off on the one on the right. The bottom left is a facility I went to that even just visually looking at it, you can tell that this raises a higher bar. They have it properly chained, signage. And on the far right, you probably can't see it, but there's a little knee wall, a wall that sticks out that's white, and it's dividing two chemicals that are kind of non-compatible. And that does meet the regulation, depending on what the chemicals are. Next slide. And you can click on all three. Thank you. And so in a situation like this, where I walked in and, you know, it's often a business doesn't know where to start. And the first place to start is to give us a call, and we can take and help you with this. So we can identify either non-compatibles, proper containerization, labeling, segregation, and so on. On the right-hand side, these are fluorescent light bulbs that are outside. Depending on the age, we could have mercury issues. And so, you know, these are often situations where I find things that staff on site just don't have time to find because they're busy doing a core job, or they're not aware that what they're doing is incorrect. And so it's just making them aware of proper practices in a lot of cases. Next slide, please. And again, this is another situation where, you know, they were storing these aerosol canisters in the upper left, and they thought that they were doing a good job because they weren't all over the floor. And I do applaud them for that. There are a couple other steps that they could take in the process to properly store and maintain those. And I would assist them with that in the same way with the rest of the pictures you see here, as far as, you know, oils and different containers of liquids and used rags in the bottom left, things of that nature. Next slide. Now, I don't expect every business to go to this degree, but this is the gold standard that you're looking for, depending on the types of waste that you're dealing with. So, you know, I'll give them recommendations, and if this is required for some of their waste, then that will be part of the recommendations. In some cases, it doesn't need to be this extreme, and it depends on the type of waste, whether it's like what's called hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste, or universal waste. Next slide, please. So our timeline, and typically how we address, if you're interested in integrated assessment, is that we start with a questionnaire and a request from you. You can either reach out to myself or go to our website, and there's a quick link that you can fill out the questionnaire. And it's kind of a survey monkey that I receive back. I'll look it over, and then I'll give you a call and kind of exchange some information, kind of drill down a little bit more to find out what is it that your business really needs, because your business time is precious, and that's why we go through this process here, and I'll explain a little bit later. But as part of that desktop review I mentioned earlier is I'm going to go through the questionnaire, look at the state and federal databases. I'll talk with you about your goals and objectives, and then we'll schedule a site visit. And on that site visit, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. I've gone shorter, I've gone longer, depending on the size of the business and what it is that your goal is, or what it is that you would like me to look at. Usually, I may ask for some additional follow-up documentation, and if that's needed, that'll come afterwards. And then we'll get you out a draft report. But what I do, and I think it's very unique, is often I'll take obviously quite a few pictures. I'll put captions to it and put in a PowerPoint. And we have on the non-regulatory side, environmental services division, assistance division. Apologize, they've changed their name several times, but we have experts that are statewide specialists in just air quality issues. We have them in just water quality issues, waste issues, and so on. So if I encounter a situation that I'm unsure of, or even just to make sure that I'm up on the most current regulations and suggestions, I'll often run through this with our statewide specialists and say, this is what I found. Here's a picture. This is what I think they should do to address it. Do you concur, or do you have other suggestions? So it's not just my eyes that you're seeing, you're getting the years of experience of other specialists for Eagle. So once that's done, I'll send a draft report out to you, often within about 60 days, depending on the complexity of the site. And I'll allow you to take a look at it, read through it. And again, since they can be so extensive, that I want to make sure, one, that it's factual and accurate. Often I work for EH&S manager or a manager that is presenting this maybe to a management team. And so I want to make sure that I've captured everything correctly. And if you have suggestions or language changes in the report, I'm definitely open to making sure that the report is accurate. I just want to make sure that the changes are factual, and I paint the conditions in an actual light. Then I will issue the final report once we come to an agreement on the language. So if you're interested in integrated assessment, the next question is, are we still doing them, and how has the process changed? And as most businesses and operations, it has changed some. When COVID first hit, we ceased all field work. We are a state agency, so we followed state protocols. And before we return to work, which we have now, we can do field work on a case-by-case basis, and that began in late summer. But we had to think about our ethical quandaries, in doing so, and engaging with people that might be marginalized or vulnerable. So our field workers permitted under the following conditions and protocols. This program received an exemption so that I could continue to do the field work and provide this service to the business public. We do have a daily health question that we answer in-house. And as long as I complete the checklist and everything is approved, then I go forward that day on the day's field work. We will use all personal protective equipment that we deem necessary, masks, gloves, we'll do frequent hand washing, social distancing, and often we'll use our personal vehicle now just because it's easier than using state vehicles and having to properly wipe down the vehicle each time in between occupants. And of course, we'll adhere to both the state and your business protocols. So whatever protocols you have, that is something that we'll adhere to. We changed the questionnaire that we send at the beginning of the process to try to get more information up front. And we are open to doing more remotely if your business is interested, but you're not as comfortable with having someone walk through your facility. Obviously, being able to be boots on the ground and look in some of those closets I showed pictures of earlier, it is much more beneficial to do so. However, we can adapt. This program adapts if nothing else. Next slide. Before I get to the pollution prevention grants, if you are interested and you go to fill out a questionnaire, it is quite a lengthy questionnaire just for the reasons I cited. As due to COVID, I try to ask for a lot of information up front. Typically, we think that it's going to take you 2 to 3 weeks to complete the questionnaire, decide on the size of your business. And I don't want to intimidate you. And the reason I say that is because we cover so many areas that I expect that you're probably going to have to get with more than one person within the business to have some assistance, because we'll ask about the types of plans you have. If you have a recycling plan or sustainability plan, what type of raw materials do you use? Do you have underground or above ground storage tanks? So we touch on a lot of subjects, and the reason we do that is because your business time is critical, and I don't want to be in your business having to ask you to go get the floor manager and then the plant manager and then the shift manager. So what we try to do is get as much information up front to minimize the actual on-site time. That way you can gather the information and fill out the forms at your leisure, your convenience. And then back at that beginning of the process, once you've submitted it to me and it's substantially complete, we don't expect you to complete everything, that's when we'll talk and I'll schedule a site inspection or assessment, excuse me. So as far as the pollution prevention grants, the EPA that we received a grant funding from to start this program many years ago, we were able to secure EPA funds again this year. Between that and Michigan Renew, these funds are going to help provide Michigan small businesses to help you implement pollution prevention, recycling solutions, and support the governor's new climate change priorities. So in all, we have about $200,000 through a matching grant, and the minimum grant is $5,000, and the maximum grant you can take as a business is $25,000. And this is a reimbursement type process where once the work is completed, we will reimburse you up to 75% of the original request if approved, and you are only responsible for 25% of the costs. Next slide. So as far as what projects are eligible, basically where we start on the process is that you have to have an integrated assessment done. If you have a recycling project or another project that touches on pollution prevention, I can definitely spend a lot of time looking at that, but we need to have an integrated assessment done. And then based on the findings, if you have findings such as a baler will provide on-site, baling because you have restriction on storage space and it'll increase your ability to recycle more, that sort of thing. As long as it's documented in the integrated assessment report, then you have something in hand to take and apply for the grant. And some of the types of eligible projects are greenhouse gases that are generated. We want to see a reduction in those, the pounds of hazardous material used, pollutants and contaminants released, a reduction in the gallon of water used, dollar savings that you might end up achieving through reductions in hazardous waste use, releases, water use, energy use, and increases in environmentally sound on-site or off-site reuse or recycling. And we also have other. So if the project doesn't fit neatly into these, since we are touching on such a wide range of topics, we are open to other projects. And again, just reiterating that it's open to all small businesses, less than 500 employees, including local units of government. And you can apply for the grants once you've had the IA performed, and we've identified recommendations as a result of that IA. So hopefully if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer that at the end of the presentation. And everyone.
And now we have Kara Wright.
Yes, I was going to say that I just posted in the chat the links to both the RFP and the webpage, and Kara Wright, with the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. We'll talk a little bit about Michigan Materials Marketplace.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. So as mentioned, I'm Kara Wright. I'm a project manager at the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. Thank you to everybody who has stuck with us. I know I'm the last presentation, but I'm really excited to share with you this tool that we have developed that is helping regional economies reach circularity. So next slide here. Yeah, so within the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development, we're a nonprofit, and we are positioned ourselves to create kind of a safe space between the public and the private sector, listening to each other's needs back and forth, and then really implementing actionable results. And so within our circular economy programs, we've been interfacing with manufacturers, industrial players, et cetera, on their materials challenges. And we've landed on something we're very proud of within the past 10-ish years called, next slide, the Michigan Materials Marketplace. So this little depiction of what circularity in industry and manufacturing looks like does a good job of laying out the different layers of players and the complexity and the interaction between them all. So what we've done is exercise all of these really great networks that we've created through our program sponsorships, also through our corporate business council membership, and we've captured players in each of those levels and brought them together into an accessible business-led online platform, next slide, called the Materials Marketplace. So you can see right here, we've got recycling companies, manufacturers, and entrepreneurs. And the goal is really to create a snapshot of regionally what the commodity supplies look like, as far as who's looking for specific materials for reuse and recycling, reprocessing, who's generating materials that they know have a use or they really hope that they can find a use for, and then making all the connections in between to create some really impactful results. And the way that we do that is kind of two parts. So in the next slide, it is through connecting businesses on the platform. You can see here's like a little snapshot of what the invitation only platform looks like. The reason it's invite only is just because we want to have a little bit of a vetting process and also create inroads to really develop relationships between our staff and the businesses who are coming to the platform. That being said, it's not super exclusive. We've already got a couple thousand businesses on the platform already. Plenty of connections are being made really quickly just by viewing listings that are for wanted materials or ones that are available materials. We've got communication channels that get these in front of our user base pretty regularly. And we've also got people who are browsing the network constantly. And this is a platform that is capable of being filtered by commodity if you're looking for something specific, but it's really designed and presents itself in a regional outlook. So yes, we have the Michigan Materials Marketplace. Nearby, we have other Great Lakes regional material marketplaces, knowing that the circularity can be a very small circle or it can be a little bit of a larger circle reaching your political boundaries. And so a lot of our users are using this platform to qualify leads, gain insights for market expansion, exploring the business case for their waste materials, whether that's a recurring waste supply or byproduct or just a one-time supply. And then also for seeking competitive pricing, the finances involved in reclaim and reuse are really important to our users. And so a lot of them are coming here just to see, what the competitive landscape looks like and how they can further promote smart financing within their business process. And the second way that we create value with our user base is, next slide, in now the virtual meeting room. So we have started to really dissect, specific commodities, even within our kind of regional network and lens, in a couple of different approaches, one of them being a recurring event series called the Great Lakes Circular Materials Roundtable, and then related follow-up networking events. And so we select specific commodities, whether that's listening to businesses and users that come straight to us saying that they have these specific challenges, or just observing what kinds of traffic is happening on the Materials Marketplace platform. And so within these more tailored conversations, of course, we have the networking aspect. It feels so good to see somebody's face, even if it's through a screen, as opposed to just browsing listings on the platform. But this is where we also explore the barriers that exist within all of our user base in reaching circularity locally. Some of those might be achieving economies of scale, procuring capital investment, the testing and validation of certain materials, and even getting down to the ideation, like we talked about, having entrepreneurs and innovators online, really kind of workshopping what challenges exist and what kinds of solutions we can imagine for the future and how to get there. And so that's where we really grab a lot of the qualitative data and market insights through conversation with our users, and those are all published on our materials marketplace website, and I'll drop some links once I finish chatting with you all. But on the back end, we're also capturing a lot of quantitative data, and this is really valuable to our program sponsors who want to check out what the recycling and reuse landscape looks like, and also for private businesses who are thinking of entering or expanding or pivoting within it. So here's a snapshot of kind of what the materials marketplace user base looks like. We've got presence all over North America. And the next slide shows you what our backend data also looks like by listings. We capture a lot of required fields whenever a user is creating a listing that has to do with, some kind of requirements that they might have internally or externally, also on quantity and time frame of recurring supplies. And so we can get a pretty good idea of where opportunities exist within here, and also maybe pain points within the broader system of where we might want to focus some of our energy in the future. And this next slide is one that we're really proud of because it shows the growing impact of the materials marketplace. It's broken down by a couple of different metrics on quantity and impact. And so as you can see, as users are coming to the platform, they're making connections with one another. We maintain those relationships and check in with them. And we really love to log all of the impacts, whether that is avoided tipping fees or the money exchange between a new business case that didn't exist earlier, and especially diversion rates. The less raw materials we can extract, the better, and the less valuable materials we can hide in the hole under the ground, even better. And so the next slide, really to sum it up, our work at the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development that led us to the creation, the implementation, the proud operation of the materials marketplace is all within the mission of increasing the use of recycled content within the manufacturing and industrial sector. We've had a lot of really great success in Michigan in particular, and it's expanded to the Great Lakes in general. And I think it speaks to the nature of industry in the area, but also the enthusiasm and kind of the spirit and culture of the people who are in positions of power and are decision makers. And so we love working with them all. And this next slide is all of our great strategic partners. A lot of them are, next slide, Kieran. Thank you. A lot of them are on the line with us right now. And we really have connections to help the businesses that come to us with their challenges or their solutions in every step of the way down to circularity, whether it's connecting with local regulators or funding opportunities, businesses in between, it's somewhere in the value chain, and then all the way down to verification and certification of products that have achieved a higher rate of recyclability within them. And so this next slide shows one of our greatest success stories. This is also one of the first success stories or one of our oldest success stories that is still a recurring transaction that we have only watched grow. We were able to connect some recycled glass generators who were paying a lot for disposal fees. They had no idea that nearby there was a tile manufacturer who could use their products in creating durable goods. And so down here at the bottom, we can brag a little bit about what those impacts look like. And I can tell you that I've been chatting with them, and this quarter it's even higher with the monthly diversion rates and the net value of this transaction. Next slide. And this is another example of one that's work in process, really a result of those roundtable series events that I was mentioning earlier on, we were listening to a lot of people in our network, whether it's in our staff or the businesses on the platform, about the opportunities and the seasonality of film plastics in the area. So we're working together to create some end markets and really develop some systems that can just self-sustain themselves for circularity regionally around film plastics. And last slide is that, you know, you can't talk about circular economy while ignoring the carbon impact of it all. It's a complicated equation. I'm sure that many of you have tried it, but diverting waste and the extraction of raw materials and then improper disposal of things inevitably will have a carbon impact. Carbon reduction and carbon impact is something that the Business Council is working on in other programs. And we do have players that kind of bounce back and forth between our programs because of how intrinsically tied that is. And so this last slide here just shows some ways of how you can stay connected with us. Next slide, please. We've got social media. This michigan.materialsmarketplace.org is a great resource. That's where we've published all of the event recaps, where I said we captured some really qualitative event market insights. That's also where you can view a calendar of our upcoming events. If you want to join some of the networking hours, we're going to be talking about reuse very soon as a business case and a business and as a business model and a business practice. We'll be talking about glass later on, film plastics, and here there's also an opportunity there to start the onboarding process if you want to join the materials marketplace. And I will be dropping my individual contact info in the chat too. So if you want to take this conversation offline, I'm very happy to connect with you all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kara. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I do have some questions to keep this conversation going. I will ask the first question of Tom Carpenter. Tom, can you help the audience understand, you know, many of most of these businesses, entities, whatever, already contract out for waste services through Waste Management or, you know, some other service provider. You know, I'm wondering if you have any tips or ideas for, you know, how we can work with service providers like Waste Management to talk about getting services, a different kind of services or different levels of services based on need and expansion of priorities.
Yeah, obviously, you know, when you have that relationship, whether it be a community provider, a company like Waste Management or somebody else, it's important to have that conversation, similar like when we were talking about the assessment, have that conversation maybe with your rep or somebody within that area about what are the possibilities. Are there different programs, or I have these different types of materials? There's community reps, there's small business reps out there, and they're there to assist in that. Similarly to the way that you know, we go on site with these large customers, they're out there to kind of assist with whether it be a kind of a program looking at single stream recycling, or kind of advising on some of the just the educational pieces that could be utilized within your organization.
That's helpful. I guess I'm also wondering then, you know, at what point is there a particular volume of material that needs to be derived in order for, you know, Waste Management to come into the company to maybe help to make a waste assessment or assess the needs and services? Or is that something that you would expect the company to do on their own?
So yeah, I think you know, the company going through the exercise of doing the waste assessment, I have found is both I guess educational, and it starts the program off. So even when we're doing it for larger organization, my company or my division really works with companies when their environmental spend or waste spends about at least 250K. So that's much larger than, you know, most small businesses. But, you know, we still want to involve all the employees that are part of that process, generally in that with that waste assessment. So it's a good exercise that anybody could start, you know, on their own. But again, you know, reps in the area often work with their small business partners as well, kind of in, the education, or, if they feel like there's something in their waste stream, often even, photo audits or assessments of just your front end load container or your trash containers to understand kind of what's in that. You could often get, pictures and understand without dumping everything out, of what the opportunity might be. Is there a lot of cardboard? Is there a lot of recyclable materials? That's usually the first big step that really kind of helps you, move that way.
In your experience, who in a small company is generally responsible for managing waste or managing those contracts?
So within a small organization, everything falls on, generally, like for small business, the owner. They wear multiple hats, but it's important, as you assess your program to, maybe even appoint, we've seen green czars or a recycling czar within an organization. They form like a green team, and those are ways to kind of generate ideas from the employees standpoint, similar to your health and safety program or other things. Look at a program that you execute well. How is it run? Is it employee run, or do you get feedback involvement from your customers? Those types of things really kind of help make sure that the program is going to be a success. And if you can delegate that's a form of employee engagement as well, that really kind of helps spur that program on.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent suggestions, and it makes me, I think, more cognizant of the fact that the services that Eagle provides through Chris Babcock to help small businesses begin to do those waste audits and figure that out, because once they have a handle on the waste, then they can begin to utilize other resources like the Michigan Materials Marketplace to manage those other materials. So
and it all falls into place, and and then similar to what we heard from Bell's, it's taking those ideas, developing programs, rolling out, sometimes collaborating with others that makes it all possible.
that sounds great. Thank you, Tom. Kate, have a couple questions for you. First of all, wondering if, there's anything, big on Bell's radar right now. What's kind of next for you guys?
Oh, well, I always say that Mylar is kind of the next horizon for us. Like the two things that end up in our landfill that our materials we're never going to move away from without some serious innovation are grain bags and Mylar. So our Mylar packages hops. So any hops that we put into any beer comes in these kind of small Mylar bags. So it preserves, and the reason we have to put it in Mylar is because hops are very light sensitive and oxygen sensitive. So by putting it in a bag that's airtight and impervious to light, it preserves the quality of the hops. So yeah, I've got, some discussions coming up hopefully with some partners through some other breweries in the area that maybe have some ideas. Maybe we can do something with next cycle. We'll see. But I'd love for that to be our next big frontier.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's great. I'm glad to hear you're tackling that. A personal question from me, when I've spoken to restaurants about using straws or having a policy like yours, they talk about, cleanliness and their ability to get the glass clean and keep, lipstick stains off the glass. Is that an issue for you at all, or is it really about something else?
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard any of those issues from our staff about using straws to keep the glass clean. So I don't believe it's an issue for us, but I honestly am not 100% sure. The idea actually came from some of our staff because there was that video a couple years ago circulating about the turtle with the straw stuck up his nose. So the question was like, can we not do straws? And the answer was, yeah, we can. They made the change literally same day, just kept straws in their pockets when they were serving tables. And made them available, but on request. And there is a cleanliness part for the straws, especially in our beer garden. It's really easy for them to blow around, and even with the compostable ones, they were ending up kind of like stuck in our landscaping, and it was more of a problem than I had known, that they just kind of made a mess all around in the garden. So we have a lot less of that now that they're only out when we need them.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. And Chris, your program is really interesting. And what I hope that the audience takes away from what you're providing is that they can provide information about what you're offering to their businesses, schools, local governments in their area to help everybody step up to a higher level of sustainability of recycling. So I hope that everybody in this audience here will begin to recommend those services so that local organizations can step up.
Absolutely, Karen. Thank you for pointing that out. That as you said, our IAs are scalable, so depend on your needs and desires. Often when we go through these assessments, whether it's part of the scope or not, my eyes wander, and so verbally, I may provide verbal recommendations, and I've had where they're like, you know what, after thinking about it and hearing your observations, why don't you include that in the report?
Excellent.
So often it's just the information sharing that they're not aware that until someone that is kind of engrossed into that type of program conveys that to them.
Excellent. Yes. Agreed. And Kara, we've been working together for a while now to promote the Michigan Materials Marketplace. I guess, do you have any observation, or do you see, the marketplace growing in any particular area that you want to share with the group? Is there any particular focus that you are going to have in the near future?
Yeah, good question, Karen. I think, we've seen in the past, like a lot of wood dunnage pallets coming onto the marketplace. And so that's really what spurred or inspired our roundtable series to kick off, focusing the first event on pallets. And so we feel like the platform has been kind of facilitated to the point where it can kind of self-sustain and grow itself in that particular commodity. We've got some good market insights posted on our website about it. That being said, we've been working more directly right now, not necessarily in Michigan, but in other parts of the nation, and I'm sure Michigan won't be far behind, on chemicals. And so, I'm not a chemist. I don't really know too much about the chemical process, but as a team, we're learning where to find those connections. We have a particular client we're working with right now who's been on the marketplace for a long time, always been looking for a way to use it. And it wasn't until recently when they were, an acquisition happened and now there's a plant closure. Now they have all of these very usable materials that would cost so much money to put for a proper responsible disposal. But instead we're able to communicate through our specific communication channels, work our network to really find optimized end uses for that, whether it's a straight reuse or kind of some kind of environmentally responsible recycling, and all within their already planned transportation routes. And that's the power of the materials marketplace when you're looking at the locality of things and being able to look at that map view, but also to be able to reach a really robust network, not only through the people who are on the platform, but through their network and through our program sponsors.
Excellent.
And the last thing is that the next thing we're going to be focusing on is, like I kind of teased our upcoming event in May. We're just going to be talking about straight reuse, kind of the different business models that you can create around reuse, the nuances of different materials, what kind of challenges and how other people have overcome those too, to really inspire some entrepreneurship within the area around making businesses focused on reuse, but also inspiring the implementation of reuse practices internally for companies to achieve financial and environmental goals at the same time.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers. Really great stuff. We hope that you stick around for just a minute. We have a couple of quick polls for you. Kelly, can you put up that first poll? just want to see how you all felt about today's session. We'll leave that up for about 20 seconds until we get good participation here. Great, that looks good to me. And Kelly would put up the second poll here. And while that's happening, I'll thank again our sponsors for allowing us to do this work and provide you with this information. It's very, I think, helpful to us to be able to provide this to you, and we hope it's as helpful to you. Okay, good. I think we're about done with that poll. I will remind you that we've got another session tomorrow, Increasing Recycling Quality in Michigan. That starts at 1 o'clock. I hope you'll join us. The recording for this event will probably be available tomorrow, as with all the others. Please share this content. We'll probably do some social media posts about all of this. Really good information provided by all of our speakers. Thank you very much. Please share the good word about recycling. Have a good day, and thanks for being here.
Bye, all. Thanks so much.